Hi guys, I'm going to try again to get this word out. I may post my bloopers because you all may find it hysterical. All I can figure is it is an object lesson. How many times the camera has failed, the phone has actually cracked on the screen. I've had crazy things happen to keep this word from coming out, and I do believe it's from God, so I'm going to persist. So this may not just be a word about an appointed time. It may be a word about persistence in the face of difficult circumstances and adversity. Do not let the problems make you think that you haven't heard from God or that He's not working. You persist, regardless of what seems to be falling apart. The word that God's given me is about the phrase appointed time. If you look in the Bible, the word for appointed time is a Hebrew word called moed, and it's used 281 times. The first time that it's used is when God talks about creation, and He's talking about how He made seasons, different seasons, to separate the times. So part of the meaning of the word moed is an appointment, a meeting, or a season. God had all kinds of appointed seasons. He had appointed feast and offerings. He had used that word in the Bible when He describes when He gave the promise to Abraham and Sarah, and they waited and waited and waited to birth Isaac. But it was a moed, which means it was an appointed season. It's not something that they were supposed to make happen on their own, and it did take some time, but He had a perfect time and a perfect plan for it. And Isaac did come. Not when they thought, not how they thought, but he did come. Another time is whenever Joshua was leading the Israelites into Jericho, into the Promised Land. That was a moed. That was an appointed time. Now, getting to the Promised Land, that's another situation that took far longer than they thought it would take. So I can imagine they got really frustrated. I haven't waited 40 years for anything yet. They wandered 40 years in the desert. I've waited 20 years or more for a few things. I've waited 16, almost 17, well, no, almost 16 years. I can't remember now, for healing. There are a lot of things that you may have been promised by God personally to you. You may have had prophesied over you. Answers to prayer that you need, that you've been waiting a long time for. But that doesn't mean because you're still waiting that it's not going to happen. God has an appointed time. He has an appointment. He has a meeting set up. He has a season assigned for your promise and your answers to prayer and your blessings. So do not get discouraged. A season is defined as a time that's characterized by a certain circumstance or feature. So seasons don't always have to be like seasons of the calendar year. They can also, I had to get on the floor because the camera kept falling, they could also be a season where something defines the beginning and something defines the end by the shift. There's a shift in circumstances. My daughter and I were talking one time about how for our lives, we don't think in terms of years, like this year that happened or that year that happened. We think in terms of, oh, well, that's when the car tore up. And then we had that season where we got rides from people, and then because of that we got to hang out with our friends a little bit more, but we also had some hardships and had to walk a few places, and that was that season. And then it shifted because we got a car again, and we were able to have more freedom and go where we need to go with less hardships, but we also didn't get to connect with people. There's different seasons that are defined, a beginning and an end, and there's a shift in the season by a change in circumstances. So, but God has an appointed time for all these things, and there's a purpose. There's a purpose in the timing. It's easy to feel like God's timing is elusive and sometimes painful because we don't understand it. But just because we don't understand something doesn't mean there's not deep purpose in it, and that it's not the divine will of God. So, we think of seasons, and we're thinking of appointed time, and we use that definition of the word. We often think of sowing and reaping. In the Bible, they were a agricultural people. They had to farm their land and grow their food. They were used to the cycle of that season, the growing season, the sowing season, the reaping season, the harvest season. They understood that everything's not instant, that it has to take its time to grow and to mature and to blossom. And I think it might have been a little easier for them to wait, but I could be wrong. It might not have been. It just seems to me that in our society, we're used to instant gratification. We have microwaves, we have fast food, we have we have a lot of things that come quickly. We can get them quickly. A lot of things, too, in our world have a predictable time period. If you want to get a 4-year degree, if you want to get a bachelor's degree, as long as you do the assigned work and you can go full-time, you know that can be done in 4 years. You know what to anticipate. And sometimes that makes things easier because you know the course that it's going to take and the steps you need to take and exactly when it's going to happen. But God doesn't always work that way, and there's a reason for it. But I know if you're like me, you can get discouraged, you can get impatient, you may even get bitter and resentful or angry because you may feel like God is withholding something from you. But there's a scripture I want to read to you, and it says that God will withhold no good thing from you, from those who are righteous. Well, part of being righteous is having faith. And if we have faith in God, that means we also have faith in His timing. So He's not going to withhold anything good from you. If He's not brought your promise yet, then it's not good yet. It's not good yet. If you think of circumstances, there are a lot of situations where giving something to someone at the wrong time is not a blessing, but instead it could be a curse. An example of that is if you've had a baby, or you know one that has a baby, that baby might enjoy the flavor of donuts. It probably would enjoy the taste of the sugar and the sweets, but you don't give donuts to a newborn because that wouldn't bless the newborn. That would curse the newborn. That could make the newborn sick or die, or if they lived on donuts, they wouldn't get the proper nourishment. They can't digest it properly. So what would be a blessing to maybe a toddler or an older kid to go, oh wow, a reward, I get a donut, could be a curse to a newborn. So that's a good example of that one. Another example would be if you have a child who's wanting to drive. You don't let them have the keys to the car when they're 8. For one, their feet may not touch the pedals. For two, it's illegal. 3, they could kill people. They're not ready. They're not physically and mentally ready to handle the responsibilities of driving. And so when you get something too soon and you're not ready to handle it, it could be disastrous. I'm going to have to just hold this. It could be disastrous. It could hurt people. It could kill people. So when the Lord is waiting or making you wait, trust Him that if it were the perfect timing and it were going to be good for you, then He would give it to you. Now, there is more. Let me find. Okay. Sorry for the wait. Thank you for being patient. One situation, the prodigal son. The prodigal son got his inheritance early. He asked for it early. Was that a blessing to him in the long run? No. He wasted it. He didn't know how to properly handle the blessings of those finances. And he squandered them away on riotous living, unrighteous living. So being given a blessing in the wrong time can be a curse. If you have a position maybe that you're hoping for a promotion in, or you're wanting your business to grow, it will be a blessing when that happens. But if it happens before you have the capacity to handle it, it would be a curse. If you get too many hours to work when you still have other responsibilities at home, then you might not be able to handle both at the same time. If you make something, part of your job is producing things, it's production, and you don't have the materials to handle the supply or the order that comes in, then, or the demand, not the supply, you can't supply it, then the blessing too soon of your business growing would be a curse. It would be a stressor. You would have great anxiety over it. So we have to understand that God's timing is perfect and He's not withholding any good thing from us, ever. We have to trust that. And so there's a scripture that says, an inheritance claimed too soon will not be blessed in the end. And that's Proverbs 20:21. So if you're waiting and God has you waiting on something, do not be bitter. Do not be angry. Do not be resentful. Trust that if it were good for you to have it now, you would have it now. So let's go to part 2.